This is the final moment of this couple. Their names were Savannah Soto and Matthew Guerra. Savannah was pregnant, 9 months pregnant. Her baby was due any day, just one day, maybe two. That day, they got into their car. Nothing unusual, just another drive, just moments away from becoming parents. They drove only a short distance, and then everything stopped. A vehicle pulled up in front of them, a pickup truck. This wasn't an accident. This wasn't random. Two people stepped out, and in seconds, everything ended. A gun was raised, shots were fired. Savannah and Matthew were killed, and with them, their unborn child. 3 lives gone. After the shooting, one of the killers got into Savannah's car. He drove it away. Not far, just far enough. The car was later found abandoned near an apartment complex. Inside, the truth began to surface. When police finally tracked them down, what they uncovered was chilling. This wasn't the act of one person. It involved 3 people, including a woman. And when the case reached court, the details revealed were disturbing, cold, calculated, and planned.
And I kind of started seizing like this. Kind of stayed like that for like, I don't know, a few minutes, and I was gonna die, I tell you the truth.
This wasn't just a double murder. It was a triple homicide. A pregnant teenager, her boyfriend, and a child who never got the chance to be born. This is the case of Savannah Soto and Matthew Guerra, and this is how a life that was about to begin was brutally taken away. By the morning of December 23, 2023, something was already wrong. Savannah Soto was supposed to be at the hospital. She was 18 years old, 9 months pregnant, and scheduled for a labor induction that day in San Antonio. Her family had prepared for it. They expected a call, a message, some sign that she had arrived safely. Instead, hours passed with nothing. Her phone went unanswered. Savannah lived on the city's west side, in an apartment complex near Grissom Road. She had been excited and nervous in the days leading up to Christmas, talking about the baby she was about to have, a boy she planned to name Fabian. The due date was no secret. Family members knew exactly where she was supposed to be and when. When she didn't show up, concern turned quickly into fear. Savannah wasn't alone. She had last been seen with her boyfriend, 22-year-old Matthew Guerra. Matthew was the father of the baby, and the two were living together at the apartment complex. On December 22nd, the day before Savannah's induction, they left together in Matthew's gray Kia Optima. That would be the last confirmed sighting of either of them. As the hours stretched on, Savannah's family tried calling both phones. Messages went unread. No one answered the door at the apartment. By that evening, the situation no longer felt like a delay or a misunderstanding. Savannah's mother reported her missing.
We just gotta keep her in our hearts and remember her the way she was. Not to remember her the way she left, but remember her as a beautiful girl with a crazy spirit.
Soto was reported missing on Christmas Day after she didn't show up to a hospital appointment to give birth last Saturday.
What made the silence more alarming was how out of character it was. Savannah had been in regular contact with her family. With her pregnancy so close to term, disappearing without explanation didn't make sense. By Christmas Eve, worry spread beyond the family. Friends began sharing posts online, circulating photos of Savannah and Matthew. The focus was on Savannah. As Christmas approached, the search took on a heavier urgency. This wasn't just about 2 missing adults anymore. There was an unborn child involved. On Christmas Day, the Texas Department of Public Safety issued a clear alert for Savannah Soto, classifying her as a missing person believed to be in danger. The alert included her description, the last known location, and the vehicle she had been seen in, the gray Kia Optima. For her family, Christmas passed without celebration. There were no gifts, no dinner plans, no sense of normalcy. Instead, there were phone calls, waiting, and constant checking of messages that never came. At that point, no one knew where Savannah and Matthew were. No one knew what had happened after they drove away on December 22nd. There was no crime scene, no suspect, and no clear direction for investigators. Just a young pregnant woman who never made it to the hospital, and a boyfriend who vanished with her, and somewhere in San Antonio, a car that hadn't yet been found. As Christmas Day moved forward, the search for Savannah Soto intensified, but it did so without direction. Family members retraced her last known movements. Friends checked nearby neighborhoods, parking lots, and businesses. Some returned again and again to the apartment complex on Grissom Road, hoping for any sign that had been missed. There was still no indication of where Savannah and Matthew had gone after leaving the day before. The clear alert brought wider attention, but it did not bring answers. For investigators, the absence of evidence was its own problem. There were no signs of a struggle at the apartment. The couple's disappearance didn't fit a clear pattern. No abandoned belongings, no confirmed destination, no communication explaining where they might be. Then, the next afternoon, everything changed. On December 26th, just after 4 p.m., officers were called to an apartment complex on the city's northwest side, several miles from where Savannah had last been seen. In the parking lot, among other vehicles, sat a gray Kia Optima. It was the same car listed in the clear alert. Police approached carefully. The vehicle appeared undisturbed from a distance, but once officers looked inside, the situation became immediately clear. 2 people were inside. Both were unresponsive. Investigators secured the scene, shielding the vehicle from view as homicide detectives arrived. Within hours, authorities confirmed what Savannah's family had been dreading. The bodies inside the Kia were Savannah Soto and Matthew Guerra. Both had been shot. The details that followed only deepened the shock. Savannah, still pregnant, had suffered a fatal gunshot wound to the head. Matthew had also been shot in the head. The unborn baby did not survive. What had begun as a missing person case now was a triple homicide. The location raised new questions. The car had been parked in a residential apartment complex, not hidden or abandoned in a remote area. It had been sitting there long enough for residents to come and go without realizing what was inside. No one had reported anything unusual. There was no immediate explanation for how the vehicle got there or who had put it there. Police addressed the public later that evening.
I don't want to go into details about that, but again, I will repeat that it appears to be a very complex crime scene.
The case originated in Leon Valley, who sent out a clear alert. We asked Chief McManus why an alert wasn't sent out in San Antonio.
This originating in Leon Valley, that's why I came out from there, the alert, clear alert.
Was there ever any indication that SAPD should have put out a clear alert of their own?
No.
Tonight, Savannah's family is left devastated after she is the second person they have lost in 2 years. Last year, her 15-year-old brother Ethan was shot and killed. Now they're hoping, as days pass, answers will come.
They confirmed the deaths and stated that there was no ongoing threat to the community. Beyond that, they shared very little. No suspect was named, no motive was suggested. For the families, the discovery brought an end to uncertainty, but it replaced it with something heavier. Christmas had passed without answers. Now, in the days that followed, the focus shifted to a new question. How did Savannah and Matthew go from missing to being found dead inside their own car? And just as importantly, who moved them there? Detectives began working backward, starting with Matthew. His phone records, social media activity, and recent communications painted a clearer picture of what may have drawn the couple out that day. Matthew was involved in selling drugs, primarily marijuana. People close to him later told investigators that he often arranged deals through messaging apps and social media. It wasn't hidden, and it wasn't new. He had done this before, and it had put him in risky situations in the past. In the days leading up to December 22nd, Matthew had been communicating with someone investigators would later identify as Christopher Preciado. The conversation pointed to a planned transaction. What stood out was where the deal was supposed to happen, not at a neutral location, but a private residence on the city's northwest side. That address belonged to the Preciado family. Sometime on December 21st or early December 22nd, Savannah and Matthew traveled to that house. Investigators believed this was the last place they went while alive. Inside the home, something went wrong. Police later determined that both Savannah and Matthew were shot at close range. The nature of the wounds suggested execution-style killings, not an accidental discharge or a chaotic struggle.
On 12/26/23, our officers discovered 2 deceased individuals in a Kia Optima, and our homicide detectives at that point began their investigation right on that scene. Detectives learned that both victims were involved in the sale of narcotics and used their cell phones to conduct much of their business. Detectives collected the victims' phones, and with the help of the United States Secret Service, we were able to extract information that led to the development of a possible location of a suspect vehicle that was seen on the surveillance video.
Up to this point, investigators had a timeline, but no faces. They knew where Savannah and Matthew Guerra were likely killed. They knew the vehicle had been moved. They knew the deaths were deliberate. What they didn't yet have was the moment where suspicion hardened into certainty. That changed when detectives began pulling surveillance footage from the area where the Kia Optima was found. The apartment complex on Danny Kaye Drive had cameras. So did nearby buildings. Investigators requested everything, hours of footage before and after the estimated time the car was left there. At first, nothing stood out. Cars came and went, residents parked, walked inside, and left again. Then, one clip caught their attention. It showed the gray Kia Optima arriving in the parking lot, not alone. Another vehicle followed it in. The second vehicle was a white Chevrolet Silverado. It parked nearby. A man stepped out of the truck and approached the Kia. Instead of looking inside or checking the car, he focused on something else. He wiped the door handle. The act was brief but deliberate. Moments later, both vehicles left the lot.
So also new today, San Antonio police released this surveillance video of a Chevy Silverado with a bed cover. It also shows 2 persons of interest police want to speak to. One of them gets out of the Chevy Silverado parked next to Soto and Guerrera's Kia. Another is seen getting out of the Kia. This video was taken near the location where the bodies of Soto and Guerrera were found.
Investigators ran the Silverado's information. The truck was registered to a residence on Charlie Chan Drive, only a short distance from the apartment complex. That address belonged to the Preciado family. Once police made that connection, the case accelerated. They obtained search warrants and began reviewing phone data tied to the residence. Location records placed the Silverado near the apartment complex around the same time the Kia was moved. During questioning, Ramon Preciado, the truck's owner, made statements that immediately raised concern. He acknowledged being aware why police were there. He did not deny being at the apartment complex. Investigators also learned that his son, Christopher Preciado, had been in communication with Matthew Guerra before the disappearance. The pieces began to fit together. On January 3, 2024, police arrested Christopher Preciado. He was 19 years old. According to investigators, Christopher admitted that Savannah and Matthew had come to the house for a drug transaction. He claimed that an argument followed and that Matthew pointed a gun at him. He said he grabbed the weapon and fired, but the physical evidence told a different story. The gunshot wounds did not match a spontaneous struggle. The placement of the bodies did not suggest chaos, and the methodical cleanup and relocation of the car did not align with panic. Christopher was charged with capital murder, not just for Savannah and Matthew, but for the unborn child as well. His father, Ramon Preciado, was arrested the same day. He was charged with abuse of corpses and evidence-related offenses for helping move and conceal the bodies. The investigation didn't stop there. As detectives continued reviewing footage and statements, they identified a third person involved in the aftermath. Surveillance suggested that Mirta Romanos, Christopher's stepmother, had been present during the movement of the vehicle and may have assisted after the killings. January 10, She was arrested and charged with tampering with evidence and abuse of corpses. By mid-January, the case that had begun with a missing pregnant teenager now had 3 defendants, a reconstructed timeline, and a clear theory of events. But the arrests did not end the story. They opened the door to a deeper, more complicated phase, one that would test the law itself, raise questions about accountability, and determine how far responsibility extended beyond the person who pulled the trigger. That reckoning would play out in court. Because Savannah was pregnant, the case carried an additional legal weight. Texas law recognizes the death of an unborn child in violent crimes. Investigators counted Savannah's baby, her unborn son Fabian, as a third victim. That single factor elevated the case from murder to capital murder. Capital murder is the most serious criminal charge in Texas. It is reserved for cases involving multiple victims, murders committed during certain felonies, or the killing of vulnerable individuals. If convicted, the punishment is either life in prison without parole or the death penalty. Christopher Preciado was charged accordingly. His father, Ramon Preciado, faced a different legal reality. Prosecutors did not accuse him of participating in the killings themselves. Instead, the charges focused on what he did afterward, helping move the bodies, concealing evidence, and interfering with the investigation. Those actions were serious, but they did not rise to capital murder under the law. Mirta Wimanos, Christopher's stepmother, was also charged based on her role in the aftermath, specifically assisting with evidence handling and transportation. As the case moved into court, the legal process became slower and more complex. Bond hearings exposed the emotional divide. Families of the victims spoke about loss and frustration. Defense attorneys argued legal technicalities, roles, and timelines. Judges weighed evidence against statutory requirements. Then came a pivotal decision. In 2025, the district attorney's office reviewed whether to seek the death penalty against Christopher Preciado. The case met the legal threshold, but after internal review, prosecutors announced they would not pursue it. If convicted, Christopher would face life in prison without the possibility of parole. The announcement satisfied some who wanted certainty and finality. It angered others who believed the severity of the crime warranted the harshest possible punishment. Protests followed. Public debate intensified. Meanwhile, the legal proceedings continued. Grand jury indictments were issued. Thousands of digital evidence were turned over to defense attorneys. Motions were filed, contested, and delayed. One defendant's charges were later dismissed on procedural grounds, narrowing the case again and raising questions about accountability. For families waiting for closure, time became its own burden. Public reaction never fully faded. The case sparked conversations across San Antonio about violence, drugs, and how quickly situations escalate behind closed doors. People questioned how a meeting over marijuana could end in a triple homicide. Others focused on the aftermath, the deliberate choices made after the shootings, the effort to avoid detection. There was also a deeper unease. The car had been parked in an apartment complex for days, unnoticed. Residents lived their lives just feet away from it. That detail unsettled many people. It challenged assumptions about safety, about how visible danger really is, and about how easily something horrific can blend into the background. Legally, the case continued moving forward. As of early 2026, the trial loomed. Christopher Preciado faced the possibility of spending the rest of his life in prison. Ramon Preciado awaited judgment for his role after the killings. A civil lawsuit filed by the victims' families moved through a separate system, seeking accountability beyond criminal punishment. But the broader impact of the case couldn't be measured in court dates alone. It lived in cautionary conversations, in parents warning children about where they go and who they trust, in people reconsidering confrontations that don't need to happen, in the understanding that proximity to danger isn't always obvious, and that a single decision can permanently alter multiple lives. Awareness in this context isn't about fear, it's about recognition. Recognizing how quickly ordinary moments can shift. Recognizing when to walk away. Recognizing that silence, delays, and unanswered calls sometimes mean more than inconvenience. The story of Savannah Soto and Matthew Guerra doesn't end with a sentence or a verdict. It continues in how people remember them and in what others choose to do differently because of what happened. If you found this documentary breakdown informative and meaningful, consider subscribing to the channel. These stories matter, and careful attention helps ensure they're never reduced to just another headline. Thank you for watching.